For almost all of human existence, the night sky wasn't beautiful. It was terrifying. For them, the Milky Way didn't sit quietly in the background. It split the sky in half. The stars were so dense and so bright, they felt close enough to touch. There were no explanations, no astronomy, no textbooks. Just darkness and things moving inside it. And here is what nobody tells you about that sky. It didn't just frighten ancient humans. It made us. To understand the fear, you have to understand what the night actually was. Lethal. For millions of years, before fire, before walls, before any technology at all, the moment the sun dropped below the horizon, humans lost their single greatest survival advantage: vision. Humans only became apex predators with the advent of technology. Before that, our ancestors were constantly hunted, and most of the things that hunted them did it at night, when humans were essentially blind and their predators were not. In 2025, analysis of ancient fossils confirmed that Homo habilis, previously thought to be among the first human hunters, were still being systematically preyed upon by leopards around 2 million years ago. For millions of years, we were not the hunter. We were the hunted, and the night was when we died. A study analyzing the largest data set of lion attacks ever assembled found that African lions are most dangerous to humans when the moon is faint or below the horizon. The darker the sky, the higher the kill rate. This wasn't myth. This was measurable, documented reality. The full moon was literally a survival tool. Its absence was a death sentence. Our ancestors clustered near fire, learned to read the grass, and shared watch through the dark. The night sky wasn't a backdrop, it was a threat assessment system. Every night, for millions of years. That experience didn't just leave scars on ancient bodies, it left scars on the brain. When visual input is removed, the brain doesn't simply stop processing. It shifts to other senses and increases the sensitivity of the amygdala, the region responsible for fear and the fight-or-flight response. Darkness doesn't just remove your sight. It activates your threat detection system and hands the controls to your imagination. And your imagination, shaped by millions of years of being hunted, fills that darkness with predators. Being afraid of the dark is a fear of the unknown. We can't see what's out there. For ancient humans, it was lions and leopards. In today's cities, it's monsters. We create monsters because they fill the predator void. The brain learned, over millions of years, that in the dark, the cost of being wrong was death. So it developed a rule: assume the worst, always. The brains that didn't follow that rule didn't pass their genes on. So how did ancient humans cope? Not with a spear, not with a wall, with fire. Fire is usually described as a tool for warmth and cooking, but that explanation undersells what fire actually meant to a creature that had spent millions of years being hunted in the dark. Fire pushed the darkness back, and with the darkness went the predators, and with the predators went the terror, at least for the radius of the firelight. But fire didn't just protect the body. It created a boundary between the known and the unknown, between the safe and the dangerous, between the lit world and whatever lived in the dark beyond the flames. And humans, being humans, began trying to understand what lived on the other side of that boundary. They looked up, and what they saw was not reassuring. The night sky was full of things that moved without explanation, stars that appeared and disappeared with the seasons, a moon that changed shape every night and then vanished, bright streaks tearing across the sky, and worst of all, events that defied every pattern they had learned to trust. Before we go further, here is a word: disaster. The word disaster comes from the ancient Greek, dis meaning bad, aster meaning star, a bad star. This is not a coincidence. This is not a metaphor. This is the literal etymology of the word. For ancient humans, disasters, floods, famines, plagues, wars did not come from earth. They came from the sky. The sky announced them. The sky caused them. And the sky, in the form of a comet, an eclipse, a blood moon, was always the first sign. A comet didn't move like the planets. It didn't belong to any known pattern. It streaked across the dark like a scar, or as ancient Roman and Greek writers described it, like a flaming sword or a severed head trailing fire. And then there was the eclipse. Imagine experiencing a solar eclipse with no knowledge of astronomy, no warning, no explanation. The sun begins disappearing in the middle of the afternoon. The sky turns dark. The temperature drops. Animals panic. Birds stop singing. Stars appear in the daytime sky. The Aztec historical record describes it this way. When a solar eclipse came, there was tumult and disorder. All were disquieted, unnerved, frightened. There was weeping. People raised a cry, lifting their voices, making a great din. It was said, if the eclipse of the sun is complete, it will be dark forever. The demons of darkness will come down. A 7th century BCE Greek poet, watching a solar eclipse from the island of Paros, wrote these words, "Nothing in the world can surprise me now, for Zeus has turned midday into black night, and now dark terror hangs over mankind. Anything may happen." It wasn't just eclipses and comets. If you lived in the northern latitudes, Scandinavia, Siberia, northern North America, the night sky did something else entirely. Something that looked, to anyone who didn't understand it, like the sky itself was bleeding. The aurora borealis. We look at the northern lights and book expensive flights to photograph them. But if you didn't know about solar particles colliding with the Earth's magnetic field, what would you actually see? Massive, silent, glowing green and crimson curtains, moving, pulsing, alive. Many indigenous cultures in North America believed the lights were the spirits of the dead playing games or guiding souls. Norse mythology described them as the reflection of the Valkyries' armor as they escorted warriors to Valhalla. But in areas further south, where auroras are rare, a sudden red aurora was not beautiful. It was catastrophic. In 1585, a rare red aurora appeared over Europe. Thousands fled their homes. They believed the heavens themselves were bleeding out. People spent the night in terror, convinced the world was ending. And here is what makes all of this extraordinary. Every civilization on Earth, independently, without contact with each other, developed the same response to these events. They tried to fight back. The Ojibwe tribe of the Great Lakes fired flaming arrows at the darkened sun, trying to reignite it. The Kwakiutl of the Pacific Northwest built fires and made enormous noise to drive away the creature they believed was devouring the moon. In Cambodia, as recently as 1995, soldiers fired guns into the air during an eclipse to scare a mythic dragon from the sky, and the only casualties were from the bullets falling back down. In ancient China, people believed a celestial dragon was eating the sun. They rushed outside beating drums and screaming at the sky. Different continents, different centuries, same behavior. Because the fear wasn't cultural. The fear was biological. It was the same ancient amygdala, wired identically across every human brain on Earth, responding to the same threat it had been programmed to fear for millions of years. And here is the part nobody talks about. That fear, the terror of the night sky, didn't just produce panic. It produced observation. If the sky was dangerous, if it could send eclipses, comets, blood moons, and 18 months of dimness without warning, then the only rational response was to watch it, predict the next disaster before it arrived. The ancient Babylonians, considered the world's first astronomers, erected watchtowers to scan the night sky 6,000 years ago. They mapped the stars and visible planets and recorded observations on clay tablets. Not out of curiosity, out of fear. Celestial knowledge became the most powerful currency in the ancient world. Those who could predict an eclipse, a flood, a drought, held power over those who couldn't. Priests, astronomers, shamans, they mediated between the earth and the sky, and fear was the leverage that made those institutions work. The Egyptians built an entire civilization's calendar around a single star, Sirius, because its rising predicted the annual flooding of the Nile. The Mayans built stone observatories aligned to the millimeter with planetary movements. Stonehenge, almost certainly, was a machine for predicting the solstices. All of it driven by the same impulse. If we can predict what the sky does, we can stop being afraid of it. And in trying to predict the sky, humans invented mathematics. writing, record-keeping, architecture, calendars, and eventually, thousands of years later, science itself. The same terror that made a man scream at a solar eclipse also made a Babylonian astronomer climb a watchtower at midnight and record the position of Jupiter on a clay tablet. The same wiring, two different responses, both driven by fear. The next time you wake at 3 a.m. and the room is completely dark, and just for a fraction of a second before you remember where you are, something in your chest tightens. That is not anxiety. That is not weakness. That is a 2 million-year-old circuit activating. The same one that kept your ancestor alive on an African savanna when a leopard was moving through the grass 30 feet away and the moon was below the horizon. You are not afraid of the dark. You are afraid of what used to be in it. And that fear, ancient, wired in, millions of years old, is the reason you are sitting here. It is the reason your ancestors survived when others didn't. It is the reason they built fires, then temples, then observatories, then cities. Every piece of knowledge humans have ever accumulated about the universe above us began with someone looking up at the night sky and feeling afraid. The monsters were real. We just learned to predict them.